right, so chapter 10 is a pretty easy chapter. This will be the last of the easy chapters. This one will focus on consumers. The last three chapters that we do, chapters 11, 12, and 13, those will all be harder chapters. They're all about production costs and the supply curve. So today, though, we're just talking about consumers for chapter 10. All right, so it's pretty basic. When we, as consumers, make choices, we're trying to make ourselves as well off as possible. And the word that economists use is utility. So the word utility means like satisfaction or happiness or meeting our needs, whatever it is, the usefulness or satisfaction that we get from goods and services. And we are going to assume that consumers are rational, which means that we know what we want and we try to make the best decision possible. So we use all available opportunities to make ourselves better off. Okay, now there are different kinds of things that give us utility, and all of these are examples. So some things that give us utility would be, say, fancy cars, right? So just fancy things. Other things that give us utility, like getting medicine, that doesn't make us happy at all to get the medicine, but it satisfies some needs. So that is also utility. Enjoying luxury things, or just even when you're not buying anything, you're just spending time with your family or friends or doing different things. Okay. All right. So consumers, we try to get as much utility as possible. And in order to get as much utility as possible, we have to make lots of choices every day about what to buy. And what we buy is called a consumption bundle, which of course is different for all of us because all of us have different things that we like and different amounts of money. But the consumption bundle for a consumer is just the collection of things that they buy for themselves. And, of course, we would all like to have a large consumption bundle of stuff, but we're all limited by money, right? We all have a limited amount of income. And the other thing that limits us is how much things cost, right? So it's not just how much money you have, but it's also then how much things cost. So like, say, housing prices in Vancouver. You might have a good income, but you still might not be able to afford to buy a house or even a condo. So it's what we can afford to buy depends on how much money we have and then also the prices of things. Okay, so consumers try to maximize utility subject to. So subject to means like limited by. Now, in general, the more stuff we have, the more utility we will have, right? So the more satisfaction from life we will have, the more stuff we have. But as we buy more and more of one particular thing, what will happen to the marginal amount of satisfaction that we'll get from more and more of one particular type of good? It'll go down, that's right. So we've talked about this idea before. The idea behind the downward sloping demand curve is that we become satisfied as we get more and more of a particular good. And so for that reason, the price we're willing to pay for even more of the good will go down, or our marginal willingness to pay will go down, or our marginal benefit will go down. And so now what we're saying also is using the word utility. So far before, we were talking about measuring it in the benefit in terms of willingness to pay, so marginal price that we're willing to pay. But now what we're showing is the amount of satisfaction, which of course determines how much we're willing to pay. So our marginal utility goes down as we get more and more of a good. All right, okay, so when we get more stuff, our total utility goes up, but our marginal utility is going to go down. So we have total utility, and then we have marginal utility, which is just the additional amount of utility we'll get when we get one more unit of a good. So the formula for marginal utility is similar to the formulas for marginal cost and marginal benefit. It's the extra amount, or the change in total utility from one more unit, or from a change in the quantity by a change of one in the quantity. Good. Okay, so eating donuts. All right, so in this table we have quantity of donuts and total utility, and what we'll do is we'll calculate the marginal utility. Okay, so it's just the change in the total utility when you eat one more donut. So first donut gives you 10 units of utility. Second donut gives you 9, so an increase of 9. And then the third donut increases utility by 7, 4, 1. And then the sixth donut would actually decrease your utility. Okay, so what does that mean? Well, you can become completely satisfied, and so this person here would be completely satisfied after the fifth donut, and then if they were forced to eat the sixth donut, then they'd start to feel sick, so they wouldn't do that. Now, how many donuts would they get? Well, we don't have any information here about the cost. So if the donuts were free, then the person would eat donuts as long as they got some benefit. So that would be up to 5. They would eat 5 donuts if the donuts were free. But usually the donuts aren't free. Usually you have to pay for them. And so then when you're making a decision, you're going to have to somehow weigh the price against this amount of satisfaction that you're getting. Now, these are just pretend units, right? So what we're measuring here is units of utility. Can you actually measure a person's utility? No, right? Like if I'm eating a donut, you can't measure how much utility I'm getting, right? You can maybe tell that it'll make me happy because it's delicious, but you can't actually measure it. So these are sort of just pretend units, just for the sake of going through the theory for the chapter. All right, okay, so yeah, so for pretty much everything, marginal utility goes down as we get more and more of the good. And so that then is one of the principles. Principle of, oh, wait, there we go. Principle of diminishing marginal utility. Okay, so then on the next page we'll start talking about money and how we have limited amounts of money. And so our limited amount of money is called our budget. And so because we all have limited amounts of money, it means that we are always having to make choices then, right? Every day we're having to make choices about how to spend our money because we can't spend it on everything that we want. We can't. So we have to make choices or trade-offs. That was a word that you guys learned in chapter 1. We have to make trade-offs. So we have to give up things when we buy one thing. Okay, so consumers have to make trade-offs. And that means that we are always incurring an opportunity cost, which we think about. So if you were thinking about like buying a vehicle, for example, which can cost a lot of money then, you're going to think about, what am I giving up? If I spend X $1,000 on this new vehicle, I'm giving up all these other things I could buy, I'm giving up vacations I could take, I'm giving up maybe extra courses that I could take, because that's less money for tuition. Or also, if I spend thousands of dollars on a vehicle right now, I'm giving up the opportunity to, say, put that money aside into retirement savings, whatever, right? You've always got these things that you're giving up, and so you have to think about that. Okay, so we have opportunity costs in terms of other goods that you're giving up. And what our choices are limited by how much money that we have. So that's called our budget constraint. Now, in reality, we can, of course, borrow money, right? So people can borrow money or use credit cards to borrow money. And so, of course, in reality, people do this all the time. But we are not going to talk about that in this class because that is a more complicated decision, right? When you borrow money to buy things today, then that creates a trade-off over time because you're getting to get the goods today, but then you're going to have to pay for it in the future, which means you're having to give things up in the future because you're going to have less money in the future while you try to pay off your debts, right? So that's a more complicated decision, and I'm sure you'll talk about that if you go on in economics. But so for this class, we're going to assume that nobody borrows money. You just have your certain amount of money, and that's it. Okay, so budget constraint. Okay, so the cost of your bundle cannot exceed your income. Okay, so we're making it simple by assuming people don't borrow money. And then we'll also go through a simplified example where a person is choosing between just two goods at a time. All right, so here we have a person choosing to consume coffee and books, and they have to figure out how much they would like to buy of each one. So the budget constraint is the fact that how much money they spend on the two goods, the total amount of money between the two goods cannot exceed their income. So expenditure on coffee plus expenditure on books. And then the expenditure is a function of how much they buy and what the price is. So for coffee, the expenditure is the price of coffee times the number of coffee they buy. Okay, so in this example then, your income is $200 per week. The price of coffee, $4. The price of books, $20. All right, so we'll start. So what we're going to do in the table here is figure out some different possible combinations of the two goods that you could get, because you have lots of choices, right? With your $200, you could get only coffee and no books, or only books and no coffee, or half and half, right? You've got lots of different choices. Okay, so we'll start with 0 coffee. So if you get 0 coffees, what's the maximum number of books that you could get? 10, that's right. So you've got $200 and they're $20 each, so you could get a maximum of 10. Okay, now, what if you were to only get 8 books? So if you were to only get 8 books, you'd be spending $160 on the books, so you'd have 40 left over, and with $40, you could get 10 cups of coffee. And if you were to only get 6 books, so then you'd be spending $120 on books, you'd have 80 left over for coffee, you could get 20 cups of coffee then. Okay, so we'll continue on with those changes. So now if you only got 4 books, you'd have an extra $40 for coffee, so you can get an extra 10 cups of coffee. If you only got 2 books, you'd have $160 left over for coffee, so you get 40 cups of coffee. And if you didn't get any books, you'd have $200 to spend on coffee. You could get 50. That's per week. Right. That would be a lot of coffee in a week. But this is not telling us what the consumer will choose. This is just telling us what their options are. So hopefully they don't drink 50 cups of coffee in a week. That would be a lot. Okay. Is that just the wind? Mm-hmm. Or is somebody whistling? Okay. Okay, so the budget line then, it goes from 10 books to 50 coffee. All right, so this is the budget line, and so it's just showing what the consumer's choices are. It's just showing what their choices are. We don't know what they will choose yet because we don't know how much satisfaction they're going to get from each of the different possible choices. So this is just what their choices are. Now this line is really similar to the production possibility line that you guys learned about in chapter 2. It's similar because that production possibility line showed what was possible to produce for an economy given how much resources they have. And so likewise, given how much money the consumer has, this tells us what their choices are for what to buy. And there's other similarities. So what if this consumer wanted to get, say, 8 books and 30 cups of coffee? They couldn't do it, right? They wouldn't have enough money, not enough income. So not possible. So anything outside the curve is not possible. If they wanted to, say, get 2 books and 10 cups of coffee, they could, but it would be inefficient, right? Just like points inside a production possibility curve are inefficient because the person then is not making themselves as well off as they could. They could get more stuff. So anything inside is inefficient. And then the other similarity is that the slope of the curve measures the opportunity costs. It did the same thing with the production possibility curve. It measured how much of one good you had to give up to get more of the other good. So likewise with this slope here. Okay, so for example, to get 10 more cups of coffee, you have to give up. So if you want 10 more cups of coffee, so along, say from here, starting at 0 coffee to 10 coffee, which is here, then you have to give up 2 books, right? So to get, sounds spooky. Okay, to get 10 more cups of coffee, you'd have to give up 2 books. And so then if you remember the, I'll just write it up here, the formula for opportunity cost, you put, on the top you put what you lose over what you gain. So the opportunity cost per cup of coffee, so we'd put 2 books on the top and 10 coffee, and then we can simplify that. Okay, and then going the other direction, so the inverse of the slope, or going the other direction, so say we start here and go here, so what's the opportunity cost of 2 more books? They would have to give up 10 coffee, so it's just the reciprocal. So to get 2 more books, you'd have to give up 10 coffee. And so now we'll put the 10 coffee on top, 2 books on the bottom, so you'd have to give up 5 coffee per book. Now, the last thing that's similar to the production possibility curve is that if there are more resources, the curve will shift. That's right, it'll shift out. So just like for an economy, when they got more resources for production, they could produce more. Now, if you, the consumer, get more income, you can consume more. Or if you lose income, then you consume less. Okay, so here your income, if it increases to 300, so it was 200 before, then the budget line would shift out. And if your income falls to 100, then it would shift in. Okay, and we can actually figure out where the line would be. So the prices are the same. So coffees are $4 each. Books are $20 each. Okay, so the line that you have already in your graph, this is for an income of 200. So now let's see what it would be with 300. So if you had $300, now the intercept for books, so the maximum number of books you could get would be 15. Now you can get 15 books. And coffees, 300 divided by 20, not 4, sorry. 300 divided by 4, that'd be 75. Okay, so this would be your new budget line with $300. Okay, and then if you only had $100, now maximum you could get would be 5 books and 25 coffee. Okay, so your budget line is determined by how much money you have, but then also the prices. So the prices could also change. And when the prices change, it's going to rotate the curve. Okay, so the budget line will rotate. So Now we're back to an income of $200, but the prices are changing. The book price is now 10, and the coffee price is now 5. All right, so intercept for the book access. Now you can buy 20 books. But coffees are more expensive now, $5. That would give you a maximum of only 40 coffees that you could get. Okay, so so the slope is changing because, and the opportunity cost is the slope, right? So the opportunity cost will change now, right? You don't have to like the ratio of what you have to give up to get more of the other one is changing because the prices are changing. Right. All right. And, okay, good. Any questions? It's a pretty straightforward chapter. All right, exercise 1.
We'll never have to go to decimal.
Oh, sorry?
We'll never have to go to like decimal range.
For the calculations?
Yeah.
Oh, I don't know. Probably not.
You can't like have like half a copy or something.
Oh, you mean for this? Like this, like you can't have a 0.2 of a book?
Yeah.
Yeah. But, well, for your answer, though, you should still simplify as much as possible. So you can still answer 0.2, even if that obviously is not actually an option to give up 0.2 of a book.
So you don't just round it.
No. All right, okay, so now we have $24 per month to spend on pizza and apples, and we've got prices. $3 per slice of pizza, $1 per apple. Okay, so first we're just figuring out the different possible bundles. All right, so first, bundle A, if you don't get any pizza, apples are $1 each, so you could get maximum of 24 apples. But then, if you get a slice of pizza, now you will only, so then you, spending $3 on the pizza, you'll only have $21 left, so you could get 21 apples. If you get 2 slices of pizza, that's $6. You'd have $18 left over for apples. 3 slices of pizza would be $9. 15 left over. Or 12 apples. 15, 9. Yeah, no, that's right. 7 pizza, 3 apples, and then 8 pizzas, then you don't have anything left for apples. Okay, good. Okay, so now the budget line. All right, so pizzas maximum 8. Apples maximum 24. And then last part here, show your new budget line if your income decreases to 21 and the price of apples increases to 1.5. Okay, so 2 changes here. Okay, now the price of pizza is the same, but you only have $21, and pizzas are $3 each. So now you would only be able to get a maximum of 7 slices of pizza. And then for apples, you've got $21, $1.50 each. That's 14. There, okay, so that would be your new budget line. right. Okay. Okay, so this again, this just tells us what the choices are. And of course, what the choices are will change if you get a different amount of income or if the prices change. And so now we'll start talking about what the consumer will choose. Now, the only way to know that is to know information about their utility or their preferences, like how much utility do they get from coffee or pizza compared to apples or coffee compared to books.